In this video, I'm going to give you my short review of the 2025 Honda CRF1100L Africa Twin Adventure Sports model with electronic suspension. I'm not going to go over every single little thing about the bike, just the things that I think are interesting. The Africa Twin Adventure Sports model had a significant upgrade last year in 2024, and this year's model is the same as the 2024 aside from bold new graphics. But to get you up to speed, in 2024, significant upgrades included an upgraded chassis around the new 19-inch front wheel for the Adventure Sports model, slightly more power and torque for the engine, and a new muscular look. Honda are pitching the Adventure Sports Africa Twin as their long distance on an off-road tourer, but I reckon it's mainly an on-road bike that can do some light off-road if it needs to. If you don't know, the Africa Twin is available in two different builds. First, there's the standard Africa Twin, which is seen by Honda as a more sort of off-road orientated version. Then there's this one, which is the Adventure Sports model. You can buy the off-road one with a standard transmission or a dual clutch transmission. Also, the more off-road one can also have normal suspension or Showa electronic suspension. The Adventure Sports model only comes with electronic suspension. When I was initially ordering the press bike with Honda, I asked them for the more off-road version of the bike with electronic suspension and manual transmission, so I could ride it off-road. When this one arrived, I have to say, I was a little bit disappointed because I was really looking forward to riding the more off-road one. But now I've ridden this one, I'm actually happy they sent it to me by mistake because I've really enjoyed riding this one around, mainly on the road. As I said, I'm not going to go over every detail because there's too much to know about this bike and the review would be too long. Suffice to say, this is a great bike and I really like it as a comfortable long distance tourer that could maybe do some light off-road. Before we get going, I just want to say that this bike is packed with so much technology and I'm not going to even attempt to explain it all because you'll fall asleep. I had the bike for about 2 weeks and I kept finding interesting things that it did. For a quick overview, here's some of the rider modes that the bike has that are managed by its computer. Honda selectable torque control or traction control, ABS and cornering ABS, wheelie control, rear lift control. It's also got 4 basic rider modes and user modes. Then it's got suspension preload settings plus the suspension modes. And that's just the riding based stuff. There's a heap of other things the bike can do. So if you like technology, this is a great bike for you and you can really tailor it to how you like to ride. This bike had 0 miles on it when I received it, so I took my time to run the engine in according to the manual. I didn't mind running it in because the engine is so lovely to ride down low in the rev range. In fact, I quite like this phase of getting a new motorcycle because what you do here has a big effect on the bike's reliability over the long term. Yeah, I know I don't own it, but it still feels good to know it's done right. I had the bike for all up about 2 weeks and I rode it almost every day I had it. I used it for going to shoots, running errands, and even did some off-road riding on it to test it out. Yeah, the tyres aren't really set up for riding wet off-road, but I had to give it a go just so I had an opinion. I was really keen to try out the electronic suspension on the bike. It's not the first bike I've ridden with this style of suspension. I've also ridden Triumph Tiger 1200s, which have a version of Showa's electronic suspension. When I rode the Triumph Tiger hard off-road, the suspension bottomed regularly, both ends, which made me ride slower and really anticipate the conditions more than I generally would. Just going to say this now, the suspension on this bike is great and I'm really impressed. The way you can set the preload according to your load on the bike with a pillion, panniers and luggage, etc. Also, you have 4 presets so you can tailor it to how you like to ride. Alright, let's move on to the engine. Engine on the bike is a 1084cc parallel twin cylinder. Power is just over 100 horsepower and torque is 112 newton meters. I rode the 2024 Honda CRF1100L on my other channel, which is called the Classic Motorcycle channel, and thought the engine on that bike was one of its standout features. I loved it. As an aside, the engine on that bike is a slightly lower powered version of the one on this bike with 86 horsepower and 98 newton meters of torque. The thing I loved about that engine was that it was so soft, torquey and easy to ride, and it had loads when you really wanted to open it up. That bike has various riding modes, but when I rode it, I mainly stuck to standard. Riding modes on this bike are Tour, Urban, Gravel, Off-Road, and there's a couple of users. When I rode the Africa Twin, I mainly kept it in Tour, which has the highest level of power for touring with luggage. I also tried off-road and gravel mode on the bike, but because of my slow speeds off-road in these conditions, I couldn't really tell the difference. I'm sure if I had the bike for longer and pushed it more off-road, I would. When you do choose to open the bike up, it has oodles of power and more than enough for me, for my style of riding on the road. The exhaust note is so lovely and it's one of the most outstanding features of this bike. It sounds equally good just talking it around, and when you open it up, if I owned the bike, I wouldn't change the exhaust. It's got a 6-speed gearbox and it's well spaced on the bike, and the clutch pull is fairly light for a bike of this size. I didn't get a sore left hand, so the clutch gets a tick there. Going through the specs and accessories of the bike, I noticed you can add a quick shifter if you want. I enjoy changing gears the old-fashioned way, so wouldn't add that. One note to make between the standard transmission and the DCT is that the DCT weighs 10 kilograms more than the standard one. I haven't ridden a DCT bike and everyone raves about them, but I asked for the manual transmission because I like to select gears for myself. Interesting fact on Honda's DCT transmission is that they've sold over 251,000 motorcycles in Europe alone with DCT since its introduction in 2009 on the Honda VFR1200F. The Adventure Sports model is available in two colors: matte iridium grey, metallic, and pearl glare white. By far the best looking model to me is the white one with the gold rims. The bike comes with LED daytime running lights and cornering lights. The daytime running lights on this bike adjust to the ambient light intensity, which I thought was interesting and a new thing to me. This bike also had crash guards with fog lights fitted too, which are an option. I really like these style of lights on bikes because they make you so much more visible to other road users. Frame of the bike is made from steel and was slightly updated back in 2024 on the Adventure Sports model to accommodate the new 19-inch front wheel. The 19-inch front wheel on the bike really helps it turn in quickly on the road. In fact, even though it's what I call a heavy bike, it still feels nimble to flick around and drop from one side to the other going around corners, even with the panniers on. This bike's got the optional center stand, which I didn't really use until I needed to take this photo of the bike on the stand. I thought it would take a lot of effort to get it on it, but it didn't. Side stand is metal and I was expecting it to be aluminium. Don't know why. Foot is quite small on the side stand and not good if you're going to park it on anything like soft grass or mud, which you might do if you take it off-road. This bike came with the 2 aluminium panniers and top box. I used the bike for loads of shoots and the aluminium luggage boxes were great. They were really roomy and didn't rattle around on the bike like a lot of boxes can. If I was buying the bike, I'd definitely spec it up with panniers, but I'd go for the plastic ones because I think they'd look better over time and they'd hide scratches. I've also seen that they do a large 58-litre top box which holds 2 helmets. This is also something I've never seen before. This is great, so you and your pillion don't need to be tethered to your helmet when you stop places. I'll go through my ideal spec on the bike a bit later on in the video. The wet weight of the bike is 243 kgs compared to 253 of the DCT model. So the DCT one, adds 10 kgs. For reference, the standard non-Adventure Sports Africa Twin model weighs 231 kgs, so 12 kg less than the one I got here. The bike does feel physically heavy to move around when you're not riding it, and I definitely wouldn't look to take the Adventure Sports model on anything too technical or serious off-road in case I dropped it. In fact, what I'm doing here off-road would be probably the most I do on the bike. Later in the year, I'm looking to take out the standard Africa Twin and do some more serious off-roading on the bike, so stay tuned for that. I didn't drop the bike, but I'd imagine if I did, it would be a beast to pick up. Standard seat height of the bike is adjustable between 835mm and 855mm. I rode the bike at both settings and I preferred the higher seat height. For reference, I'm 6'1" with long arms and legs. There is a lower seat height available which is adjustable too, and that can be adjusted between 795mm and 815mm. The seat is very comfortable and I did a lot of road miles on the bike and I didn't get a sore bum. Most bikes I ride these days I get a sore bum after about an hour if it's going to get sore, and my bum didn't get sore on this bike, so it's perfect in my eyes. The TFT display on the bike is nice and big at 6.5 inches and has everything you need on it, but in my ideal world, I'd do away with that older style LCD display underneath it. I suppose that's there so when something else is taking up the larger display like CarPlay or Android Auto, it can still show you the important detail, but it just looks like a bit of an afterthought to me. Sitting or standing on the bike is very comfortable and feels very neutral. As I said, I'm 6'1" with long arms and legs, and sometimes I feel like bikes have too much reach to the bars in their standard form, but this one feels just right to me. Bars are high and wide, and the controls all feel good to use. There's so many buttons and switches on the bike, and you need to read the manual from cover to cover to start to understand how it all works. The enormous 24.8 litre fuel tank does feel wide on the bike. I own a Yamaha Tenere World Raid and the tank on that bike is 23 litres and it's also wide, but the Honda is wider than that still. When you're riding the bike on the road at a relaxed pace, the wide tank really isn't an issue. When you do notice it is when you want to move your weight forward on the bike because it spreads your legs out a bit. Probably more of a thing if you're riding off-road than on-road. One of the added bonuses of a wider tank though is the additional wind protection you've got when you're riding along on the road, so there's that too. Honda reckon you can get over 310 miles per tank or 500 kilometers on this bike. Screen on the bike is also very high and great at making road miles comfortable. I liked how much it protects you from the wind and I didn't feel blown around too much on the road. One of the downsides of the screen though is that to change its height you need to use two hands, so you either have to stop to change it or you have to take both hands off the grips while you're riding along to change it, which isn't ideal. Screen has 5 stops of adjustment, but for me it was pretty much up on the motorway and down everywhere else. As I've said a few times, the front wheel on the bike is 19 inch and the back one is 18 inch. Tyres are tubeless, Bridgestone, Battle Axe, Adventure A41s. The standard Africa Twin model runs a 21-inch front wheel which has more of an off-road focus for rolling over bumps on the trail. The 19-incher on the front of this bike, paired with a decent set of road tyres, makes this a really quick handler for quite a big bike. It is really easy to drop into turns and it tracks really well. The tyres feel sticky, soft and smooth on the road, over bumps too. Turning circle is also great on this bike. The bike's got two 310mm wavy discs up front with two 4-piston calipers. The rear one has a 256mm wavy disc with a 2-piston caliper. Brakes on this bike are excellent, full stop. The electronic suspension on the bike is by Showa, and it's called Showa Electronically Equipped Ride Adjustment, or EERA. Forks have 210mm of travel up front, and the rear has 200mm. I'm really interested in how the suspension affects the handling of the bikes I ride, and it's one of the things I spend a lot of time adjusting on my own bikes. The following is taken straight from Honda's press release on the bike, and I think it's a great explanation of how the electronic suspension works on this bike. The system automatically provides optimum damping force relative to the stroke speed. It works by adjusting the damping level based on the information from 3 sources: the bike speed, the bike stance and attitude, and the fork behavior. The suspension control unit adjusts the suspension's behavior within 15 milliseconds of these calculations being made. The system's flexibility means that damping adjustment can be programmed to change as the vehicle speed changes, allowing firmer damping for high speeds, for example. In addition, it can adapt to specific circumstances, such as preparing the bike's suspension for landing from a jump or reducing dive under hard braking. In addition to this, you're able to adjust the preload according to your load. Say if you're taking a pillion or your panniers are loaded up. There's also suspension modes available depending on how you want to dial your ride in. So you've got mid, hard, soft and off-road. Of course, if you want to fine-tune things beyond these settings, you can do so in the menu system even further. The feel of the suspension at all times felt great to me. Lovely and soft over the small square edge bumps in the road, and a good amount of compression for the larger bumps in the road to stop it bottoming. I tried the bike with and without luggage, on and off-road, and it always rode very well. Off-road, the bike never bottomed. Under hard braking, the fork didn't bottom, and it stayed up enough in the travel so I didn't feel like it was diving too much. Yes, it does add more additional cost, but it eliminates so much additional faff for people who like to tweak their suspension, and also for those who like to just click and go too. If I had to nitpick on the suspension, I'd say I actually couldn't find anything wrong with it. Ground clearance on the Adventure Sports model is 220mm, so that's 30mm less than the standard, more off-road focused Africa Twin. Lower ground clearance on the bike really wasn't an issue for me, because if I owned this bike, I'd mainly just ride it on the road as a tourer. Also, the lower ground clearance helps keep the center of gravity down low, so it's easier to corner, I suppose. Build quality on the bike is typical Honda, no issues whatsoever. I'd say the bike is fairly loaded up with technology, and I never really got to know it completely in the time I had it. The bike comes standard with cruise control, heated grips, USB socket, as standard, to name a few nice things.
Thank you.
Honda also sent me the Apple CarPlay / Android Auto guide to the bike, which allows you to set up your phone. I think this is a cool feature in practice, but the last thing I really want to do when I'm out riding is be distracted by my phone, so I didn't try setting that up. I'm sure there's people out there who will love this feature, but I actually prefer to be uncontactable whenever possible these days. I've had a look at Honda's configurator online, and if I was speccing this bike up, these are the options I'd go for. Fog lights for visibility on the road, main stand for maintenance and potentially helping plug a flat, plastic panniers and top box, engine and fairing guards for protection and to mount the fog lights, side tank pads so my knees wouldn't scratch the tank, rally pegs for off-road riding. So I really like my time with the Honda CRF1100L Africa Twin Adventure Sports model. It's a lovely bike to ride on the road, which can do some light off-road. Yeah, it's not the most purposeful looking adventure bike, but that's probably subjective. It does have a heap of interesting technology packed into it, which will be a real draw card for people who are into technology and enjoy adjusting things like that. Thanks to Honda for loaning me the bike. If you've made it this far in the video, I think the next logical thing to do is just go and ride it at your dealer. I don't think you'll be disappointed at all.